At 5:30 a.m. local time, a Russian Bayan-M class missile corvette, equipped with 8 Kalibr NK cruise missiles featuring a range of 1,553 miles and a 992-pound high-explosive warhead, prepared to launch against Ukrainian cities from the Sea of Azov. The Bayan-M, measuring 243 feet in length with a displacement of 949 tons, carried the K2 radar system and Pantsir-ME air defense suite. The mission initially proceeded in silence, but that would change in an instant. The Russian sailors remained unaware that 7 Ukrainian drones stalked them.
These drones included 3 high-speed Rebaka units with 22-pound shaped charge warheads, 2 Spear drones specialized in radar jamming with integrated ECM systems, and 4 Bover drones carrying 110-pound high-explosive warheads, all remotely controlled via encrypted radio links. But before diving into today's main content, comment 1 if you support Ukraine, or comment 2 if you support Russia, and 3 if you're neutral. Now let's return to today's video content. The lead Rebaka drone accelerated to 249 miles per hour as Russian checkpoint anti-aircraft guns opened fire. The Zu-23-2 automatic cannons, firing 23mm rounds at 2,000 rounds per minute, deployed at the coastal checkpoint, created a dense curtain of fire. The rounds filled the dawn sky. Each 23mm projectile could shred a drone in a flash, and that's when the real problems began. The checkpoint gunner couldn't see the drone, but heard its distinctive engine noise. He fired toward the sound, adjusting his aim at the engine's whine. The Rebaka's electric motor, emitting only 80 decibels, became an unwitting locator in the dawn's quiet. The lead Rebaka abruptly banked hard left, pushing to maximum speed of 268 miles per hour, streaking past before the anti-aircraft barrels could track it. But damage was done. The gunfire alerted all Russian air defense positions within a 6.2-mile radius. Mobile radars like Podlet K1 and P-18 spoon rest activated immediately, scanning airspace at 100 to 170 MHz frequencies with a 155-mile detection range at high altitudes. Ukraine's element of surprise vanished. The drone operator's screen suddenly filled with interference. All drone systems went haywire. Compasses spun wildly. Video feeds flickered. The drone flew blind for 0.3 seconds before regaining signal. Russia's Repellent-1 jamming system, operating across 400 MHz to 2 GHz, caused the frequency interference, temporarily disrupting control links. Behind the lead Rebaka, 2 others followed at 30-second intervals. Exploiting the chaos to slip through, these were Spear drones, designed to blind the ship's radar defenses. Each Spear carried 50-watt ECM jammers targeting ship radar frequencies, disrupting target lock capabilities. They had to succeed. The 4 Bover drones took a northern route, slower at 124 miles per hour, but with heavier payloads. These were the hammers to strike after the Rebakas cleared the path. But warnings via telegram reached the next checkpoint. A Repellent-1 jammer waited, emitting 400-watt electromagnetic waves flooding control frequencies. The lead Bover's screen went black, signal lost. But Ukraine anticipated this. Pre-programmed waypoints activated. The drone switched to autonomous mode, navigating via accelerometers and optical terrain markers, flying blind through the electromagnetic storm. The Bover's inertial navigation system, using MEMS sensors, maintained directional accuracy for 5 minutes without GPS. 3 minutes later, video signal returned. The Bover stayed on course. But ahead, a BTR-82 blocked the path,
its machine gun firing preset patterns. The BTR-82, with a 14.5mm KPVT machine gun at 600 rounds per minute, created a 1,640-foot wide fire zone. The operator dove the drone into an industrial area, using buildings to break line of sight. The industrial site's concrete and steel structures created natural radar clutter, reducing ground radar effectiveness. However, those buildings sheltered Russian soldiers. Hearing the drone engines, they swarmed out like a kicked anthill. The drone held 33 feet altitude. At this height, Earth's curvature created radar shadows. A hilltop radar could detect targets at 31 miles at high altitudes, but only 7.5 miles for low-flying ones. Physics became the drone's shield against the BTR. Russian soldiers used AK-74 rifles and PKM machine guns, firing 5.45mm and 7.62mm rounds, but effective range against small drones was about 984 feet. The drones threaded invisible safe corridors while Russian soldiers fired at sounds and glimpses. But statistics don't lie. Concentrated fire from a coordinated squad finally hit. The third Rebaka spiraled into a parking lot. Its warhead detonated on impact. The blast created a 16-foot destruction radius, wrecking a nearby military truck. 2 Bover and 2 Rebaka drones remained. They couldn't afford more losses. The mission now hinged on precise coordination among the remaining drones, with the sole goal of neutralizing the Bayan-M before it launched missiles. Then the lead Rebaka crested the final hill. The operator's screen showed something that shouldn't exist. Ukrainian intelligence briefing was gravely wrong. Reports omitted the Pantsir-ME system's presence, deployed near shore to protect the ship. In 4 seconds, he had to decide to salvage the mission or lose all drones. The Pantsir launched 6 missiles simultaneously, but these weren't ordinary surface-to-air missiles. These were Pantsir-ME anti-drone interceptors, developed after commercial drones embarrassed Russian air defenses in prior engagements. Each missile weighed only 26 pounds, but carried 200 tungsten balls in a fragmentation warhead, designed for a special donut pattern against small UAVs. The balls would spread at 5,906 feet per second, forming a 33-foot diameter lethal cloud, enough to destroy these drones. The Pantsir operator used a laddered approach tactic, launching missiles at staggered heights. The first at 164 feet, second at 98 feet, third at 33 feet, forcing the drone through at least one fragmentation pattern. The fire control system calculated intercept points based on the drone's current trajectory, creating a 3-dimensional kill box. Each missile had a proximity fuse emitting radio pulses, waiting to detect enough metal nearby to trigger explosion. The system used one RS-21E radar, scanning at 2,000 revolutions per minute, allowing target position updates every 0.03 seconds. But the Rebaka operator studied Pantsir engagements thoroughly. He knew the missiles had a critical flaw, a 1.2-second arming delay after launch, a safety feature to prevent warhead detonation too close to the launcher. At 268 miles per hour, the drone covered 473 feet in that 1.2 seconds. Upon seeing the missile launch flashes, the operator shoved the stick forward, diving straight at the Pantsir. This decision risked exposure to the Pantsir's 30mm cannons at close range, but it was the only chance to breach the defense grid. The missiles streaked over the UAV, but their proximity fuses remained safe, unable to detonate even as the drone passed inches away.
By the time they armed, the Rebaka was below them, using the launcher's safety protocol as a shield. The operator held 16 feet altitude and targeted the Podlet K1 radar, which fed target data to all Russian launchers within a 124-mile radius. The Pantsir's two 30mm cannons opened fire, each at 5,000 rounds per minute. The gunner tried a firebox tactic, creating rectangular fire zones where the drone might appear. But the fire control system needed 1.5 seconds to compute, 0.5 seconds for servo motors to aim, and 1.5 seconds for rounds to travel 1.2 miles. Total lag was 3.5 seconds. The drone operator changed direction every 2 seconds, ensuring the gunner always solved a stale problem. This tactic exploited the drone's maneuverability, with a 33-foot turning radius versus the Pantsir missile's 1,640 feet. The Rebaka streaked through and slammed into the radar antenna. The shaped charge warhead detonated, creating the Monroe effect. This occurs when the warhead's explosion compresses a copper cone into a supersonic jet, not melting, but transforming solid copper into a piercing spike that penetrates armor like paper at 22,966 feet per second. The copper jet pierced the antenna array, processing units, operator station, and exited the rear, dispersing as copper dust. The second Rebaka targeted the P-18 spoon rest early warning radar. The Pantsir switched to backup thermal imaging, but dawn created temperature inversion, a cold air layer trapped under warm air. This caused thermal scintillation and false heat signatures as air layers mixed. The Pantsir's FLIR thermal sensor, with 640 by 480 resolution, couldn't distinguish the drone from background objects like industrial chimneys. The drone's electric motor generated only 18 degrees Fahrenheit above ambient. Against the morning sea retaining yesterday's heat, the drone appeared as a cold spot, then vanished over cooler land. The thermal imager's processing algorithm, designed to track 1,112 degree Fahrenheit jet engines, couldn't maintain lock on such small temperature differentials. The Pantsir gunner fired in desperation mode, using preset spiral patterns starting from the drone's last position and expanding outward. This hose technique might work against helicopters unable to change direction instantly, but drones could pivot 90 degrees in half a second. The drone's angular turn rate hit 180 degrees per second, outpacing the gunner's tracking. 5,000 rounds fired, none hit. The Rebaka struck the P-18 center, eliminating a 124-mile radar coverage area in an instant. With both primary radars destroyed, the Russian corvette, 2.5 miles offshore, lost its early warning net. Without Podlet and P-18 for initial detection and tracking, the ship's radar had only a 25-mile horizon, allowing under 2 minutes warning. The ship's FERC-2 radar, operating at 1020 GHz, couldn't detect targets below 33 feet due to sea clutter. The defensive shield protecting the corvette vanished. The ship, preparing to launch missiles into Ukraine, now stood blind and isolated. The ship's radar spotted approaching drones at 2.5 miles, ghostly targets appearing and vanishing with wave swells. The Russian ship faced an impossible problem: distinguishing drones at 10 feet altitude from 6.5-foot waves, as both produced similar radar echoes. The Doppler effect, usually separating moving targets from static ones, failed when drones flew at varying speeds from 92 to 138 miles per hour. This matched sea wind speeds, confusing target discrimination algorithms. The computer's clutter rejection algorithm, designed to filter sea spray, began mistakenly discarding real threats. Every 3 scans, drones vanished entirely as the processor deemed them false echoes. But that didn't stop attempts to engage. The AK-630M2 Duet system spooled up with a mechanical whine. 10,000 rounds per minute spewed from 2 30mm cannons. Each had a 2.5-mile effective range using fragmentation rounds with proximity fuses. The fire control computer tried computing trajectories via Kalman filter algorithms. This predicts a moving target's next position by mathematically blending prior positions with current sensor data, like forecasting a zigzagging car's path by averaging what you see with physics allows. But the drone operator skewed these calculations with random inputs every 2 seconds. The Duet system was designed for P-270 Musket missiles, 6,614-pound weapons on predictable trajectories. Against 331-pound randomly maneuvering drones, it was like swinging a sledgehammer at a hummingbird. The computer needed 3.5 seconds for a firing solution. Drones changed direction every 2 seconds. The math never aligned. The Duet, despite 1,200 revolutions per minute radar scan rate, couldn't keep up with drones' random trajectory shifts. Undeterred by total misses, the corvette deployed PK-10 decoy system, launching clouds of chaff cut to half the targeting radar's wavelength. Each strip created radar echoes larger than drones. In seconds, hundreds of false targets bloomed on every radar screen within 31 miles. For radar-guided missiles, this would create impenetrable confusion. But for camera-guided drones operated visually, it merely produced sparkling light shows in the morning sun. The drone's 1080p cameras with 120-degree fields of view allowed operators to maintain visual locks despite radar clutter. Operators ignored the light display and kept eyes on the ship. Next, the ship's TK-25E electronic countermeasures activated, emitting 200 watts across 20 MHz to 40 GHz. Against conventional radio-controlled drones, this would sever links instantly. But Ukrainian drones used frequency-hopping spreads, switching 128 channels per second in random patterns known only to operators. This LPI protocol reduced intercept probability below 0.01%. Jamming hit individual hops, causing frame drops and pixel noise, but never blocked enough consecutive channels to cut the link. Video quality dropped from 1080p to 480p, annoying but usable. Sensing the impending strike, the ship's captain ordered S-shaped evasion maneuvers at maximum speed. The Bayan-M, topping 29 miles per hour, couldn't outrun 138 miles per hour drones. But physics is non-negotiable. The 949-ton ship needed 15 seconds for a 30-degree turn. Drones required only 50 milliseconds. The Rebaka operator recognized the ship's movement pattern and timed approaches during stable intervals between turns. Analyzing ship motion from drone cameras allowed precise prediction of the ship's position 5 seconds ahead. At 1,640 feet, the operator switched to manual control. The radar mast filled the screen, 20 feet of critical electronics. The Duet cannons couldn't depress below -5 degrees. At 656 feet and 10 feet altitude, trigonometry placed the drone below their fire arc. Sailors with PKM machine guns fired from the deck, but faced an impossible problem. The drone crossed their view in 0.8 seconds. Human eyes need 0.2 seconds to focus on moving targets, plus 0.3 seconds to track and 0.2 seconds to aim. By then, the drone moved 328 feet. They were literally shooting at retinal afterimages. The lead Bover targeted the ship's radar mast, housing the entire radar suite.
the shaped charge warhead activated to destroy antenna arrays. The mast, containing Furka-2 antennas, was the ship's fire control and communications hub. The captain yelled orders for emergency launch procedures, attempting to fire Kalibr missiles before disablement. But the sequence required 2 minutes to align gyros, confirm targets, and warm missiles. This demanded continuous radar for target data. The Bover drones were 30 seconds away. The first Bover slammed into the radar mast. Immediately, all ship radar, communications, and data links disrupted. Launch capability gone, the ship became a sitting duck. The second Bover dove at the port side at 30 degrees. The operator aimed at the junction between frames 44 and 52, where the missile magazine lay behind 0.6-inch steel. The magazine held 8 vertical launch tubes, each with a Kalibr NK. If lucky, the blast would sympathetic detonate stored Kalibrs, turning the ship into a fireworks display. However, Kalibr's safety locks prevented chain reactions, limiting damage to the compartment. At 328 feet, the operator made final adjustments, accounting for the ship's 9-mile-per-hour drift and 3-degree list from sharp turns. The shaped charge needed 90-degree impact for maximum penetration. Too shallow an angle would ricochet. Too steep wasted energy. The operator practiced this 500 times in simulation, but reality included unmodeled variables, adrenaline-shaking hands, seawater on camera lenses, and awareness that missing meant comrades enduring more Kalibr barrages. This psychological pressure raised the operator's heart rate to 140 beats per minute, but 200 hours of sim training maintained accuracy.
The Bover struck precisely at the missile magazine's forward bulkhead. The shaped charge, a copper cone surrounded by explosives, created the Monroe effect. The blast focused into a molten metal jet at 22,966 feet per second. The 0.6-inch steel was like tissue. The jet penetrated, spraying molten copper over munitions and missile components. The second Bover hit the missile processing gear linked to vertical launch tubes. The blast destroyed VLS fire controls, fully paralyzing the ship's offensive capabilities. Hydraulic pumps, fuel lines, and electrics turned missiles into scrap. The explosion breached 3 separate systems simultaneously. Hydraulic fluid at 3,000 psi sprayed across electrical panels, sparking instant fires. Missile coolant lines ruptured, releasing toxic hydrazine derivatives. Most critically, warhead safeties disengaged, leaving 8 armed but useless Kalibrs. Despite heavy damage, the corvette didn't sink. It limped back to port 12 hours later, with blackened superstructure, holed hull, and smoke rising from internal fires. Recovery would take at least 18 months, if Russia could source parts amid sanctions. Radar and electronics components, mostly pre-war European imports, were now nearly irreplaceable. The 8 Kalibrs intended for Ukrainian cities remained unfired. Ukrainian operators in a bunker 186 miles away had crippled a $500 million warship using Alibaba-sourced parts. 30. Comparing total damage versus investment for both sides reveals significant cost-effectiveness disparities. Russia invested about $500 million in the Bayan-M corvette, including construction, weapons, and radar systems, plus 8 Kalibr NK missiles at roughly $1 million each, totaling $508 million. Damage included loss of ship combat capability, with estimated $200 million repair costs and 18-month timeline, plus a $10 million coastal radar network, Podlet K1 and P-18. Russia's total estimated damage reached $710 million, excluding operations and personnel costs. Meanwhile, Ukraine used 7 drones, totaling $350,000, losing 1 Rebaka valued at $50,000 in the attack. Ukraine's total loss was about $50,000, achieving neutralization of a warship and prevention of a missile strike. The Russia to Ukraine cost-damage ratio stood at 14,200 to 1, demonstrating the overwhelming advantage of low-cost drone tactics against high-tech targets. Comment 1 if you support Ukraine, or comment 2 if you support Russia, and 3 if you're neutral.